We're going to do Sebastian Kneipp. If you've been to any fancy spa supply store, you'll often see Canipe Products, right? They're using his name, but they're not truly Canipe products, right? They're from Germany. They're made in Germany, but they still have like a lot of artificial colors and things like that. And they're not what Sebastian Kneipp would have used, right? But that being said, the first Melissa or lemon balm bath I ever had by them, I saved it in milk jugs for the next night because it smelled so good. So, but here we're talking about Father Sebastian Kneipp because he was a priest. So remember we talked about, I don't remember, as a Renaissance is starting in Europe, the separation of church and medicine have kind of divided at that point, and medicine kind of starts to take over and become compartmentalized. Before that time, monasteries are often where medicine is practiced, where people are treated, where the priests and nuns are often the doctors, because, right, the only ones who could read the textbooks often. There was no medical schools really yet very well in Europe at this time. So now we're talking about Kneipp lived from, he's the last one we need to cover really in my mind, 1821, 1897. After this, we move to American soil. America, right? America. So then we get into all the rebels. So this is our last cultivated healer. Everybody after this is going to be a rebel on American soil. Okay. So Kneipp was a priest in Bavaria in the Black Forest area. I believe the town is called Bath. I'm not sure about that. Where the monastery was at, like many famous masters before him, he seemed to have some kind of innate, mysterious ability to heal people. Like almost every master that we've talked about from Europe, he actually was extremely sick and healed himself. That's how he created water therapy. So he is considered the father of hydrotherapy. Did he invent hydrotherapy, the use of healing water to heal people? Like, so when we say hydrotherapy, we really mean anything, right? This could be swimming in springs, drinking mineral water, drinking herbal teas, herbal medicine, walking barefoot in springs, all these different things, compresses, poultices. So when we say hydrotherapy, saunas and steams and cold plunges and hot baths, all these things are like anytime we're using water. Okay. He's considered the father of modern hydrotherapy, but he in no way invented it. But what I do want you to understand about him is he did make an actual complete kind of system of healing that involved using water as the main therapy method. Okay. To me, remember when we talked about Ayurvedic medicine, we talked about panchakarma, this very elaborate process that you can still pay to do today, where you go to a spa and you get like an enema, you get like all your food cooked for you, you get herbal medicine, you get massages, you get scalp massages, you get oils in your ears and eyes and nose. It's pretty awesome. This is kind of almost like a European version of that in my mind. Okay, we'll get into that in a little bit. So like almost everybody else before him, right? Especially the last person we talked about, Culpeper, right? He almost died, right? Kneipp, similar to the last group of people like Paracelsus and Culpeper, he was adamant about treating and helping the less fortunate. Very similar to Culpeper, he was very upset that pharmacies and apothecaries had a lot of like exclusive formulas and legal patents and things like this. He was very kind of opposed to that, very much in the way that Culpeper was. In fact, he hated the pharmacies and only, as far as I understand, he mostly just gave his own medicine that was made there at the monastery. Okay. From things like Culpeper that were gathered in his area locally. So his, array of herbs and tinctures and baths that he's using is very simple. It's not a lot of herbs. I think I've counted only about 30 herbs in his entire textbooks and writings. It's not very much, right? Later, Dr. Christopher's about the same, Culpeper was pretty expansive, but it was a pretty small group of herbs that he used, which is a good reminder that you don't have to know 200 herbs like we've covered in the class. You can just know 25, 30 herbs really, really well and help most anything, right? You just have to know those herbs really well. So he's kind of what we would call master of the small materia medica. What I mean by that is he's master of only a handful of local herbs, but he knew every single thing and every nuance about them. That makes sense? This is not common in China and India, where people, when they're a master, they tend to know 1,000 herbs or more, some of which you may only use once a year or something. So both of those approaches work well. One is not better than the other one, right? I want you to, everybody understand that? Everybody's okay with that? Very practical, right? Like some of the other masters before him, his treatments were actually part of his kind of spiritual practice and his religious outreach. He received so many medical letters a day that he had to quit opening them. There were, in the small Bavarian town where he treated people in the Black Forest, they had said there were sometimes a line of people a mile long or more. And people would wait sometimes for days because he would only see as many people as he could in a day. And then he'd have to quit at some point. People would just wait in line. Like Culpeper and that, he was, a priest, so he never really had to charge people. So I don't know. I'm sure he took donations and that. I don't know how that worked exactly. But yes, there were so many patients that showed up every day. They would say there were actually people sleeping in the streets and everywhere of this small town, this little village. And there are often no lodging for them. A lot of writers who write about him say the town where he was at almost would emanate like a kind of healing energy. So I've always wanted to go there and see if it's still imprinted there or not. I'm sure it is, right? It'd be very, very cool to do a road trip there. A lot of the people he saw were priests and monks and nuns, but he saw everybody, all walks of life, famous people, homeless people, people of all social status. Like other healers before him that have been famous, this is something that I hope we've impressed on this group. He had complete and unending faith in the power of nature to heal any known disease. That's like a core belief that I personally have also. That doesn't mean that everybody that we tried to help is going to be completely healed for a lot of reasons, but in theory, I believe this is true. Okay. Have you gotten that from the program? You know, a lot of, I think we talked about like the first couple of weeks of the theory of natural medicine, where my personal belief, a lot of cultures have, is that there is for every problem, past, present, or future, there is a solution that's already been created in nature. That's why I don't get too scared about like future plagues and pandemics, because, you know, we know, I don't like to think about it, but I mean, we know the solution is here somewhere, right? Kind of like a detective. Okay. He is also, like a lot of famous people before him, he is doing some radical stuff. If you read a lot of his case studies, this is, you know, in a time before hospitals and things like that, where, you know, if you read a lot of his case studies, I mean, people were coming with like tumors, you know, as big as half of their head, and, you know, people with what we would call today MS and ALS and severe things, you know, people being wheeled up in like primitive wheelchairs and things. And he had a ridiculous success rate in curing what are often called incurables, right? So there's something special about him and his treatment. He felt that, yes, all medicine should be available to the poor. That was part of his core mission. He was also quite well known for being both very honest and also very direct in talking with patients. I don't ever get the impression that he was outspoken or maybe like emotional like Paracelsus. I imagine he was just like a very stern, matter of fact, in a loving way. That's how I imagine him. Okay. He lived at the monastery where he practiced at. He saw patients all morning, and then he spent all afternoon treating all the other priests and nuns and monks. They say he basically only ate a little bit at lunch every day. He didn't really eat very much. Okay. So hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of patients a day. I guess he did charge a little bit for some of his treatments, but he would never refuse anyone. And as a child, he had TB, which was very deadly at the time. And he actually read a book on hydrotherapy. This is actually documented in his book that we'll talk about. He began treating himself daily with hydrotherapy and jumping into the Danube River. And he eventually healed himself through the use of cold water therapy and herbal medicine and foot baths and compresses. So yeah, this book that he talks about, I can't find what book he doesn't call it out. So I don't know what book he read to get some of this. Okay. So he writes one of the most important books ever written on hydrotherapy, which is an amazing book still today. You can get it free online. It's called My Water Cure. It's translated from German. Okay. The last time I was at Oktoberfest at the German American Society, I eyed this antique copy of it from like the probably right about the end of his life, that I tried to donate money to buy it from him so we could have it here, but never got it done yet. So the book is in its 36th edition worldwide. My Water Cure. It's a really good herbal. It's a really good book. Okay. So again, he did not create it because hydrotherapy has been around since kind of the beginning of time, right? But he did create a complete medical system that used hydrotherapy, but he also included diet, herbal medicine. He especially used a lot of tinctures. I noticed more than teas in his writing, but some teas, a lot of tinctures, exercise, topical herbal medicine, aromatherapy, and a lot of water treatments. He was also very famous and very well received. He often people, my understanding is that often people would keep coming back for as many days in a row as they could. I believe 2 weeks was considered like a treatment sometimes, like you would have to be treated for every day for a couple of weeks. Some of this would have been just a prescription that would have been done where the monastery is at, there's actually cold water springs, like Long Pine Creek, right? It took him 30 years to create and write the book Water Cure. And he said he revised and refined the system of water therapy 3 times before he got it down just right. So to me, it's like such a precious lost pearl. The only challenge is they still practice it in Germany and parts of Europe, but you absolutely cannot study it unless you are a medical doctor. I've tried to go over to Germany many, many, many times. They will not train you. It's considered like a medical treatment in Germany now. I don't know how close what they do in Germany now is all from Kneipp or if they've modified it. I don't know for sure. You said you didn't go to a Kneipp center? Okay. But I've called many times. They're pretty strict about it. Many famous doctors also stayed with him to study because they would bring their patients and he would cure them and they would kind of want to study with him. Let's see. But his basis is cold spring water, but he is using a lot of contrast therapy, like some hot water baths and foot baths and contrast and hot foot baths and sitz baths, all these different things we talked about. So in Chinese medicine, we would call this village style medicine, meaning you were known in your village and the whole area. And basically every morning people just would wake up and they're lined up at your front door. There was no scheduling, no appointments. You just waited, however long it took to be seen, right? This was a time, before we had to be to work at 8:30 a.m. and, off to get kids at 2:30 a.m. exactly. So he's often using internal herbal medicine also. Again, most of what he used was made from the local area where he lived by him and other people, other monks harvesting it. Okay. Many miracles were performed. Even people who couldn't walk were able to completely walk again when they left. That's why his system to me is so intriguing. I've studied it I feel like as much as I can without actually doing it. It's kind of hard to understand what all of his treatment is still. His treatments were also known to affect people's body and mind, and he would even say it touched their soul. And that's something that's really cool about water. A lot of times when we see people who are good at hydrotherapy, there's this idea that, right, water cleanses away emotions, but there's also this idea like using baptisms and blessings, how water can just wash away negativity and even cleanse our soul possibly, right? Okay, questions yet? So often when you saw him, he didn't actually always treat you. He would often just give you your prescription and you would go. Like, you're getting this tincture, you're doing this hydrotherapy at home for this long, and that's your treatment. Sometimes I think he would do the treatment. Okay, so it usually takes about 2 weeks. So he's got the 5 pillars, which are the water, healing with the water, diet, exercise, herbal medicine, nutrition. Those are the 5 pillars. The water itself, the cold water, diet, exercise, Herbal Medicine and Nutrition. He has some really funny quotes. There's actually some deep writing I need to add to this, but if you read his book, it's a really good read, by the way. It's really cool. Part of Canipe therapy is where you walk without shoes on. You walk on rocks. So like if you see a Canipe therapy today in Europe, it's kind of like where someone took stones and set them in cement, like a little reflexology, like a trail you walk up and down that's about like 30, 40 yards long, and the spring water is like running through it. You're just basically walking on rocks like we do in the river, right? Very simple. This is not like super complex.
What is he defined as the difference between nutrition and diet?
That I don't know. Yeah.
In America, they're kind of the same
thing. Yeah, let me read. There is actually nutrition and diet would actually could be one. He often just included this term called balance as the fifth pillar. I don't know what he means by that. I assume he means like emotional, psychological balance. But here's a couple of his funny quotes. How must the poor feet rejoice who come out at last from their cages and feel the warm rays of sunshine. So it said that in this town where he lived, everybody that was there, because they were all doing this therapy, everybody was barefoot, always. And I've seen pictures of it. You just see like down this little idyllic little Bavarian town. You just see towels draped over everything. I've seen some like antique pictures of it. Very, very cool. Another quote is, every plant has its own individual effect. My favorite quote of his that I've been thinking about today is, not until I incorporated the soul did I find success. I don't know what he means by that exactly. I have my own ideas, but cool. If you notice you have eaten, you've eaten too much. Yeah. This is another quote of his. The reproach cannot be, this is talking about how simple his system is. This is like country medicine, right? Very simple. When we come back to America after this, America, right? It's all country fried after this. So this is kind of like setting it up. Like what I mean by country fried is when American herbal medicine gets established, it's very simplistic and very simple approach. It's not super complex. It's very based on a lot of simples and understanding 100 uses for one herb. Okay, so here's his quote. This reproach cannot be addressed to me. I willingly throw open the drawers of my pharmacy and invite everyone to analyze their contents. No expensive stock in trade or like patent formulas will be found here. For the most of my medicines, infusions, extracts, oils, powders are drawn from simple weeds and herbs, well known and much prized by our ancestors, but most now forgotten and despised. These may be found in almost every field and garden, on the common and by the wayside. And as this little work is chiefly written for the poor, the greatest merit of my remedies lies in their very cheapness and vulgarity. So he's just using what grows around him, right? What we would probably call weeds, a lot of weed medicine. It is for the sake of the poor that I have devoted long years to this study, seeking out and renewing acquaintances with each obscure and insignificant herb, with the view to raising it anew to a well-deserved honor and consideration. That's what we're trying to do, right? Bring all these plants back and prairie plants, right? I have examined and analyzed, dried and dissected, boiled and tasted each over and over again. There is no herb, no powder whose effects have not been previously tried on myself before giving it to the world. This is again what every master has said, from Hippocrates, right, and Galen, like, you must throw the books away and try everything yourself and experience it, right? Something we do. That's why we drink teas every week, to try to remind everybody what this feels like. How do you feel? Okay. How good is God towards us? My heart impels me to exclaim here, not only that which we require for sustaining life, our daily bread, does he cause to grow for us. In wisdom, he has created everything in perfect measure and harmony, and his love makes countless little herbs spring up from the earth in order to bring solace and consolidation to suffering mankind. Yep. If we only had the sense to recognize it, right? Let us pursue actively the little plants which the Creator has given scent as a tiny perfume flask by which to proclaim their qualities and attract our attention. And as we pluck them, let us render thanks to our Father who provides bountiful for his children. Is that cool? What I find really interesting too is it said he always had a white dog that followed him everywhere he went. That was never separated from him, whether he was preaching in church or actually healing people outside or wherever he did this. There was always this white dog with him. Right? Okay. So this is just like a sketch overview of everything he uses in his therapy. So again, every single person or disease would get a different prescription. Okay. But this is like some of the things he used. So he used compresses, which we've talked about in class, right? Right. And a lot of his compresses were just water. Sometimes they were herbal teas. But we have the upper chest compress that he used to treat stomach and colon problems. The lower compress, which is from the bottom of the neck to the bottom of the spine. So we'd probably call this a back compress, which is used for back pain and fever and other problems. The abdominal compress, where we're going to put it on our abdomen for indigestion, menstrual cramps, stomach pains. Okay. Those are just a few of his compresses. And then we have bath. We have cold foot baths, which he used for fatigue, insomnia, to cool the body down in fevers, and then summer. So this is just a cold foot bath. We have a warm foot bath, which he would use for anxiety, extreme weakness, malnutritioned people, anemia, the elderly, mucus congestion. Oat straw foot bath, which is something we need to bring back, right? This is just good old, not wild oats, but the oat straw that we use a lot in herbal medicine still. This he used for tumors and any kind of growth on the feet. Okay. Semi-bath, which means we're just going up to the belly button. This is for people who have extreme debility. We've got the sitz bath, cold. Everybody knows what a sitz bath is. Like in the day, everybody had a sitz bath thing at home, right? That's just like a little tub where you just sit your tuchus in it, right? And your legs are hanging out, right? Kind of cowgirl style, cowboy style. So the cold sitz bath was for any disease of the colon and digestion. The warm sitz bath was used for kidney and bladder problems and bladder stones. And then there's a bunch of herbs that he would often put in the hot sitz bath. So his main sitz bath herb, by the way, is horsetail, which is a major bathing herb that we haven't really talked about that way. It's really good for your skin too, right? Because it's got silica in it. So we have full body bath, which in Kneipp therapy, you never go above your neck. Okay. So that would be called a full body bath, but you're not putting your head underwater still, right? And a warm full body bath. So again, it looks like warm baths, whether they're full body or half body or sitz bath, are always going to be for kidney and bladder problems. His favorite warm bath, by the way, for the whole body is pine needle, which we still use today. It's a very rejuvenating circulatory for fatigue and adrenal fatigue and poor circulation. Okay. We have head baths, eye baths, all kinds of things, right? Vapor baths, kind of the list goes on and on. But what he's kind of also known for, this is where the therapy is, where I can't figure it out. He did what are called water effusions. All these different sequences that are kind of complicated, where he would take different devices like you would water your flowers with. What are we calling that? Water can? Yeah, water can. Yeah, that's the old name for it. You would just take a water can with either the herbal tea or cold spring water and pour it over your body in a sequence and direction based on what was going on. So, for example, like on someone's back, and I don't know all this because it's talked about in his book, but I've never seen it really done in a professional way. This is your back, right? Okay. So he would, like, for example, I know for like a lot of his treatments, he would start at the right shoulder, come down the side, up the side of the spine, down the other side, and back up. So this would be poured in this continual motion, and then you would refill the can and do this again and again. And this is done in Ayurvedic medicine and Panchakarma, except they use hot oil, which is even, to me, funner, right? So this would be one example of an infusion. Sometimes they were just done like over a certain part of the body, but they're all done in these unusual sequences that's really unique to Kneipp therapy. His book actually details hundreds of these. Some of them are just poured over the kneecaps. There's just some are poured on the scalp. There's just all kinds of different things that he's doing. So to me, this also makes, this is where part of the real medicine lies. And this is where I really want to learn this somehow, but just can't find anybody willing to teach it. Okay. So his book is free and online and should be in your reference because it's just a great kind of herbal reference. The back third of it actually has common diseases, like you can look up cold or flu or hemorrhoids, and he'll give you like a hydrotherapy prescription for that disease. So it's a really good book, and it's free. It's online, right? Copyrights far expired. Okay. All right. Questions on Canipe? So this is often called caniping. So yeah, in Europe and I think in France, and they have actual Canipe spas. My understanding of it now is they have added, it looks like, a lot of like what we would probably call chiropractic and stretching to it. It's probably why a lot of people are allowed to study it without a license, because they're doing, I think, some adjustments and things too. So you would be at a spa and you would get this done every day for kind of like you would panchakarma, anywhere up to 2 weeks or a month even. Remember, in Europe, this could be potentially covered by your insurance. If a doctor says, hey, you're too stressed, you need to go to the Canipe Center, this would be part of a covered healthcare expense. You're going to be served organic, natural food. And in true German style, that includes organic beer and wine, right? That's considered healthy. Germany. So this is, maybe a couple little different little quirks about it. But yeah, it's something I'm really passionate about trying to study. I did find a professor who taught at a Canipe Center in Texas at a medical school in Germany, who was willing to teach it, but I just have never been able to get him here or anything. Need to reach out to him. Who is also, by the way, the world's UFO expert, I found out. So it was an interesting fellow. So I didn't know that till after I started communicating with him a little bit. So that would be really, really, really cool to try to learn more of this. If any of you ever go to Europe and get real Canipe done, please let me know. Please secretly record it too, so we can bring it back here and figure this out. Because, it's one of those things you can see all the way you pour water in the book, but, it's like just one of those things, kind of like Tai Chi or something, or massage, until you actually have somebody teach you, you can't like really get it. So this will be really fun for a massage, add to massage therapy. Business expense too. You go to Germany to study it. Yeah. I mean, it's a business expense for you. Okay. Questions on Canipe. The exciting part is now all the masters, in my opinion, or a lot of the people in world history are going to be in America now, or all the really intriguing people after this point. What we're going to see now is that Europe actually, after about this time of Canipe, about 1900, Europe starts to go to a little bit of a dark age with herbal medicine again, because it kind of gets full bore onto the Western medicine, right? Evolution. That's where Western medicine started in Europe. It did not start in America, right? America copied the idea of medical schools and medical associations. This is all done in Europe. So what's going to happen about 1900s, Europe kind of starts to wane, and the hotbed of activity switches to America. And we got real America people coming up, like real rebels, Americans, wild people. So he's the last tame one we'll study. So any other questions on Canipe? So when you buy the little Canipe products at fancy spas and stuff, that's, Canipe's probably rolling in his grave about those things, but it's not real Canipe stuff. Okay.
So you get treatments for hot and cold therapies.
Mm-hmm.
Theories that it's better to do one first than the other, or how.
Yeah. So in relationship to how like really popular cold water therapy is right now, he was very adamant about if you are going to do contrast therapy, you do hot to cold and no longer than 3 minutes with cold therapy, no matter what he was doing. And you always ended with cold. So you could go back and forth a number of times, the hot to cold water or whatever the therapy was, but you would, yeah. You always start with hot and end with cold, no matter how many times you alternate back and forth. So what we're going to see people like Dr. Christopher recommend some things. One of the things he actually, as part of his therapy, that actually shows up in America in herbal medicine later is what we call the cold socks treatment, the cold sheet treatment. We talked about those ever? So these are Canipe therapies. This is Kneipp created these. This is not, I don't know if he created them, but he made them popular. The cold sheet is where if you have a cold or flu, or you want to extremely detoxify your body, or Dr. Christopher said if you were extremely diseased, like an incurable disease, you may do this every day for like a month or two. You just get a sheet and you're going to soak it in cold water, like spring water, wrap it over your whole body, put a wool blanket over you, and go to bed. And when you wake up, that sheet will be often very yellowish and stained and kind of yucky, because there is something magical about that pulls out toxins. So even if you don't want to do a whole body treatment, you can often do what are called cold sock treatment, right? Where you get socks and you soak them in spring water and you put them in your freezer. You let them get frozen and cold. And then you're going to, after they freeze, you're going to put them on your feet cold, right? And then you're going to put big, thick wool socks over top of that and go to bed. That's a really good remedy for headaches and migraines, by the way.
Is there a link between that or this therapy and the one where people put their feet in the water and like, I don't know.
I think that's a whole different, like more modern device in that. Yeah, the detox with bath. That'd be something totally different than Canipe. Yeah, that would be.
You talked about just being achy. Anyway, it popped in my mind, so I tried that one night. I felt really good the next day.
The hydrotherapy stuff is mind blowing. Yeah, I'm telling you, like hydrotherapy is so simple and it's just really powerful therapy. It works so well, and it kind of blows my mind sometimes still.
Put them in the freezer and drink them. Well, the socks are hard to get.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quite as long in the freezer.
Yeah.
It's funny, but
Yeah. We've even talked about the cold heart compress. Remember when we talked about like fevers and heart problems? And I can't tell you how many people that have had chronic chest pain and palpitations just do a single cold compress on their heart and go to bed and put a wool blanket over you, just a little dish rag that's cold spring water. Just wake up, not have like heart discomfort for like months afterwards. Just amazing what this little hydrotherapy stuff does. So something special about water. And remember, he's using like spring water. This would be like long pine water, right? Okay, we're good with Canipe. Okay,